Back now, hour number 3 with Tim Alexander. Coming up tomorrow, we have Bill Salas on the Now Prophecies. Tim, we have today another Super Tuesday. It's not as big as the last one. Next week is really big. We have the take-all state of Florida. We have Michigan. Some of the latest polls are showing that little Marco, the what I call the idiot, and
he's just a gay blade. He's doing the best he can.
And then we have Ted Cruz, who's totally corrupt and trying to pretend he's not part of the establishment when his wife's on leave from Goldman Sachs and is a CFR member, and he doesn't talk about the fact he had a $1.2 million loan from Goldman Sachs that he just forgot about declaring.
And he's not qualified to be president under the U.S. Constitution, a minor detail.
Yeah, exactly. What I want you to kind of talk about is the fact that we really have only one party in the United States. It's called the Establishment Party. Hillary's on the Democratic side, and Ted Cruz and many others, including little Marco, who's a substitute for Jeb Bush, is in the Republican side of the establishment. They're trying to throw hundreds of millions of dollars to get rid of Trump.
Yeah, the party itself is spending over, I think it's $105 million essentially in anti-Trump efforts. And that has never happened before. I mean, here you have a guy who's clearly the leading candidate for president in their party and leads everybody in the race to be elected president in November, and his own party is trying to destroy him. Why? Well, he won't take their money. You see, you follow the money, and you always figure out, it's a really good roadmap to figuring out what's going on. The global banking cartel, Khazarian mafia, they own America, at least in their view. They own America. They certainly own our politicians. They own our mainstream news media, judges, financial system, Wall Street, etc. And they just think it's absolutely outrageous that you have this multi-billionaire who will not play along. He cares about the country. Maybe he's a little arrogant, maybe he's a little outrageous and so forth, but he won't take their money. He won't take their money, and that's driving them nuts. He won't be their puppet, and that scares the living crap out of them.
Well, we know that the leading news story on Drudge right now is tech execs, GOP brass, secret dump Trump meeting. I mean, this is disgusting. And on Fox News, I watched Bret Baier. They were interviewing Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And believe it or not, the Republican Party is so corrupt and so evil, they're purposely setting it up for the Republicans to actually vote for Hillary over Trump if Trump gets the nomination and becomes the candidate for president.
But you know, on the Democratic side, Jimmy Carter, who I have a lot more respect now that he's out of office than when he was in office, and I've talked to him several times. But Jimmy Carter said basically that the Donald has a much better chance of being president than Cruz or any of them. He's not going to support the Republican candidate, but you can tell, that where his true feelings lie. By the way, on my artwork on my blog Europe Today, I have an interesting bit of artwork. Fox News: rich Jewish people telling middle-class Christians to blame Muslims. America. The American middle class is somewhere between dead and dying. And we are frustrated. We're just frustrated to be hell. And even a lot of very wealthy people, the lower upper class, the middle upper class, and even some of the extreme upper class, they don't want to see America go down the toilet. This is our country. We were born here. We love America.
Tim, one of the problems that we talked about this in the last hour is that the problem is not just electing a good candidate, and he'll bring a team with him, but we are the fourth branch of government. We had the three segments with Dr. Fred Graves and How to Win in Court, and I've taken the course, and I'm retaking it again now to update my skills on medical legal issues. The fact is, if we were to file lawsuits, say, against the governor and the state of Michigan regarding Flint, Michigan's pollution, water pollution, which, again, they need to be sued. If we were to file against schools that don't have operating, water fountains and not proper teaching, if we were to file against the teachers' union which support Hillary Clinton, if we were to file against these individuals that are violating national security or telling, say, the border guards, you don't do your job or get another job. This is what Obama has basically done to our border guards, which is why the border is wide open. These changes are occurring because we are inactive. A lot of people think that if they just elect a right politician, they're going to get themselves
to criminally
the problem will be fixed. But
let me individuals to criminally prosecute.
Tim, let me finish. The primary thing, and I'll be finished in a second, is we need to realize if we don't take action, we can't just in an election year think, well, we're just going to put all our chips on Ted Cruz or Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. We have to realize the only one in these candidates that actually, number one, has the brains to fix the problem as well as identify it is Trump. Bernie has a heart, but he's like the straw man in The Wizard of Oz. He doesn't have the brains to figure out how to actually have an economy to pay for all the things he wants.
Socialism is a failed policy. I mean, if you don't know that, you don't know History 101.
Right. Right, and so when we see things like, for example, even talking about hydrofracking we did in the last hour, hydrofracking can be used with no chemicals. But guess what? The industry wants to use chemicals. They're collaborating with eugenicides and destroying the water table. And the fact is, when Hillary was hit by this with Bernie Sanders and the audience asked her the question, she's not going to interfere with the governors that are Democrat because they're doing hydrofracking because it's their oil industry, and they're destroying the water table and going to destroy the biology of the people and the plants and animals in their state.
Yeah, both her and Bernie, I think it was yesterday, came out with very strong pro-abortion statements.
You see, the fact is, and I'm going to say this for all those people out there that think abortion's good. Let's put it this way. If I lost my mind and I have skill sets and I say, okay, you're planning on aborting, how about this? We'll do a non-toxic abortion, low-flow suction, and we'll take out the fetus and I'm going to grow it in a uterus, in an artificial uterus in a lab, but I'm going to horizontally insert DNA from animals and create a super soldier. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it's not your child anymore, it's mine, because you said it's a dead piece of flesh. What is she going to do about it? We can now, by the way, take skin cells and turn them into ova and sperm, so we can actually take a punch biopsy of your hand, which takes 20 seconds, put one stitch across it, and then take that and grow hundreds of fetuses if you want, just from that one punch biopsy. We can create egg and sperm, by the way. Do you know that? And what are they going to do about that?
Playing
if
God
you believe in abortion,
is a very dangerous thing because just like that Wizard of Oz character, we don't have the brain power.
Well, the problem is, you see, opening up the abortion issue opens up the bottomless pit of genetic pollution. It means trans species, and they've talked about this, and I saw hints of it in this very, very well done kiddies movie called Zootopia, where you see these humanized animals. Now, they've actually hinted at this, we're talking about the CRISPR protocol and genetic engineering, that we can humanize cats, dogs, and so on, so they won't be just like a dog, they'll be like a dog-human hybrid, or a cat hybrid to human.
What kind of crazy SOB would want to do something like that?
There are some very rich and powerful people. I saw a video last week about a South Korean scientist. If you pay $100,000, they'll clone your dog, and they actually insert a gene so their nails are fluorescent to tell you that's the clone of your old doggy. And they'll do it right now. I mean, people say, there's a company here in California called Repet that does the same thing. Repet. You just take the bone marrow. If you don't want the dog right away, you want it in 5 years or 10 years, no problem. They'll make any number of clones.
But that's not that's not the same animal. That's a type of a twin. Tim, by the way, there are problems with that.
No, there actually aren't. And let me explain the reason why I say this is a problem people don't understand. I was recruited back in 1977 because I have skill sets. I was working on nonlinear software for actually looking at neural networks. On my own, by the way. To work at UCLA. And they wanted me to work on a project in the World MS Tissue Repository with Dr. Tortelot. But they also wanted me to work on a super soldier program. Eventually they'll hack into people's consciousness. And they'll actually download a copy of all your memories and put it into a new clone, believe it or not.
Of where?
It won't be you. It'll just be
your stove?
Perfect copy. Well,
do you have difficulty taking supplements? Are you
nowhere can?
That would put all the universities out of business, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Well, what people need to understand, when you open the floodgate of abortion, you don't just have, the University of Palma in Italy, back in the early 70s, and George Washington University in the United States were doing work on artificial uteri to grow fetuses. And they were actually able to grow the blastula phase of embryos right through to the 20th week, which, by the way, is the week where you're supposed to cut off. So they would actually kill the fetus growing there. You could grow it in an animal fetus, in an animal uterus. You don't have to grow it in a human. You can do all kinds of things. You can horizontally insert DNA. The HAC gene, human artificial chromosome 47, can actually act as a cassette to insert genes from different phyla, species, and genera. People say, you can't do that. I say, well, somebody like me with my skill sets, if I became evil, which I'm not, I know how to do these things. I know how to actually set up the framework to actually analyze and figure out the step-by-step pieces.
Yeah, but you're not the only person who can do that, and many people that can do that.
Right, and there's a lot of people who can do it. Are sociopsychopaths, okay? They're really smart. People don't know that what we've been doing underground in special research facilities and doing splicing of human and animal DNA and doing other things like the Super Soldier program is far more advanced than people realize. And these maniac abortionists, for example, don't realize 93% of the abortions in the world are female. They're not Down syndrome. They don't have Fragile X syndrome or some gene defect. No, they don't have Zika virus where the ultrasound shows they have no cortex or they got anencephaly.
Because
no.
In China, the tradition is that the males, particularly the eldest male, takes care of the parents.
That's true.
Not
that's true.
the female. And therefore, they want to eliminate the females because they have a one-child rule. Now, the problem with that is you end up, nature is a pretty good balancing system. You have slightly more females than males because, or slightly more males than females because the males get killed off in wars and they struggle. But then all of a sudden, when you artificially change everything, you end up with 2 or 3 or more times the number of young males of young females. And that presents one heck of a problem to any society.
Tim, what they've done now in China is they have an excess of about 125 million excess males.
Yeah.
Now, Mao Zedong in the late 1940s said he could raise an army of 100 million, which is a number that they talk about, which is a number from the book of Revelation. He actually quoted Revelation in his Red Book. Now, people need to know it's not just a China problem, it's a problem in India. If you fly up to Vancouver, Canada, which is a very huge city, I mean, it's 5 times the size of San Francisco, half of the population are from China, and they're not poor Chinese, they're rich. I mean, it's one of the richest cities on the planet, okay?
Yeah,
Vancouver,
but they have
Canada.
a real problem with Chinese mafia, too.
Well, I know, because I worked in the Vancouver General Emergency, and the triads came in when I was sticking in a hemopneumothorax chest tube in a guy, and they told us to clear the emergency room because with their Uzi machine guns and the 3-piece suits, these very trim Chinese triads, and they were wearing black sunglasses like, MIB, Men in Black, and they said, clear it out or you die too, doctor. And they were very, very businesslike about it, and they were there. And he already had a couple bullet holes in him, and I'm draining out the blood and trying to save him so he can go up to the operating room. And you hear blah, 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 and you see pieces of tile and blood, and it was just a mess, okay? So people need to realize it's an issue. Now, that's not the problem. In Vancouver, the Sikh community and the Indian community, they do the same thing as the Chinese. You can go down the street from an abortuary in Vancouver, because they have a lot of abortions in Canada, and you can go, and an Indian technician will do an ultrasound and tell you 93% chance of not having of having boy. So they're real happy. You don't see a handle, boom, you're going to get an abortion. Now that may go down to their own doctor, because in Canada, abortion is a big industry. So Canada's not growing unless they immigrate people, which is why Justin Trudeau is pushing like crazy for all these new immigrants from Syria, which aren't properly vetted. And most of them aren't Christian, by the way. Here in America, the Obama administration is persecuting Iraqi and Syrian Christians.
Justin is not the guy that I thought he was, unfortunately. But go ahead.
He's a corrupt idiot, okay? And the problem is he's another globalist, just like his father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And I know about a lot of the inner workings of the government because my great uncle was the deputy prime minister.
Deputy prime minister.
He was a long-time deputy prime minister under Pierre Elliott Trudeau, so I know the deputy prime minister was my great uncle, my grandmother's brother, okay? So this is not like really distant. What I want people to understand is you're not going to have solutions followed unless you have the fourth branch of government, which is us. So Trump may be great, and all these attacks against him shows that the globalists know that he's taken away the meat. They're swimming in this sea of money.
He's a threat. He's a significant threat. Well, you know what, though? What we've been talking about is a very ungodly environment. People playing God, people killing infants. All of this is very ungodly, anti-God. It's demonic in its nature.
Right. Well, right now in 2016, we're watching Zootopia. At some point, some scientist somewhere is going to come up ethically and say, would you like us to splice some human DNA? For example, Richard Seed of Seed Corporation in Chicago has actually designing pigs to be the vessel for multi-system organ transplantation by splicing in genes into a pig embryo, implanting it in a mother so that 85% plus of the DNA of the pig is actually human. So when the pig gets big enough to transplant the heart, lungs, liver, etc., they can do a multi-system organ transplant, and there's no histocompatibility.
Gee, I hope they manage to filter out any possible transpecies problem with viruses, bacteria, and
the
so
main one
forth.
is what's called the main virus is a virus called PEA, which is a pig virus, which is actually worse than AIDS by a large margin. And this virus, if it does happen to be in there, and of course it's easy to test for the DNA of the virus. The problem is that this will fill the gap in terms of organs. But on the other hand, you're creating transhuman hybrids that are created for organ transplantation. It's a very easy step to say, I would like to have a Burmese hunting cat with an IQ of 140, with human-like characteristics, and can speak in English.
Eat you, by the way, but go ahead.
And people say, really? You want to do that? And the thing is, the people don't understand that the fact that we could do this is something we shouldn't do. This is the bottomless pit. The bottomless pit isn't, what to talk about. And I saw an angel of the abyss. His name was otherwise called Abaddon or Apollyon. And he opened the bottomless pit, and out of it came a host of locusts. Well, guess what? The bottomless pit is the genetics. You open the bottomless pit, and you're basically now doing something that the book of Jasher, which the brother of James of Jesus said, was the reason why the flood was sent, is because it says in Daniel chapter 2, that they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. We're not talking about politics. We're not talking about money systems or finances. We're talking about the genetic seed. And what's happening is that so shall it be during the times of Noah as it is at the time of the end. We're there. We're there. And people say, well, you can't do that, Dr. Deagle. I can give you a damned equipment list. I can tell you how to splice the DNA. I can tell you how to use it with things like, it's called jumping genes and the riddle gene. And inserting.
When you use the intelligence that God gave you for ungodly purposes, you're following Satan, and you will reap the whirlwind.
I wrote an article on the transposon jumping genes, the riddle genes, and how we already have the tools and technology to create what we call the genetic Armageddon. And people don't understand. They think, well, I think Dr. Deagle's arrogant. No, how about you're a knucklehead and you won't listen? How's that? You better damn well listen. And welcome back. Tim, I think a lot of people get focused on the election game. And the fact is, when we elect a president, the president has specific powers to deal with international war, making war, like declaration of war, international exposure. But in fact, he's in a bully pulpit. He's almost like, if you want to call it, the pastor of the country. It takes legal action for us. The fourth branch of government is us. That's why I mentioned about the how to win in court course, and how, like this lady up in Detroit who says my daughter's school doesn't have operating water fountains and doesn't have proper trained teachers, and she actually attacked the fact that two of the major teacher unions were supporting Hillary Clinton, but Hillary Clinton didn't answer the question correctly when she said, well, are you going to get rid of these untrained or teachers doing inappropriate activity with children? But the unions protect them. We see the same thing with the state medical board. They'll protect somebody that's well connected to the medical board, even if they're harming or killing patients. And they'll go after people that are whistleblowers or people that are actually doing innovative care.
Well, I've seen that myself. I won't name any names, but a certain brain surgeon that he operated on my mother-in-law. He actually saved her life by the operation, but then because he didn't want to take the time to go into the room, he just rolled his hands and said, well, she's brain dead. And even I mean, my medical training is limited to having, EMT when I was volunteer fireman. I said, well, she's speaking. She's breathing on her own. She's not brain dead. And I talked to you about it, and you told me what to do, and that really saved her life. And she's still alive. Years later, she's still alive. But a physician friend of mine in town who knew the guy, he laughed. He said, "It's unbelievable that they haven't gotten rid of him." And this stuff happens all the time. The guy was just committing murder, in effect.
Yeah, you got to understand, he had POB.
Well, he made the hospital's money. Let's put it that way.
Or PTB, I call it. He had PTB. He had the powers that be. The powers that be are, whether it's the Law Society, the State Medical Board, the connections with corporations. Just look at Monsanto. They passed you can't prosecute Mount Satan over things like Corexit. Or
how the heck can they do that? You know.
Well, the first thing is you can penetrate through that.
Face of everything that
I'm
is
a medical
American
legal
or
expert, and I've
Constitution.
taken the jurisdictionary course. You can penetrate through that because they'll pass a law, but the law can't violate the rules of evidence or the rules of procedure or evidence. So you can actually penetrate through that and destroy it. So they can pass what they call a law, but if the law violates common sense, decency, or natural law, it can be stripped away. Yeah. People then say, well, you can't sue them, so I won't sue them. No, that's not true at all. For example, people need to start suing the 2.73 million or trillion gallons of glyphosate that's sprayed in our crops and our tampons and our cotton every year in America. They need to understand, why are they allowing hydrofracking?
China, which is one of the most polluted countries on earth, will not buy our grain anymore because it's so damn dangerous because of Roundup and stuff like that in it. China won't even take our grain.
I got a picture on a website, and I won't mention the website, but I got a picture on a website I think is really telling. And it has a quote from Ezekiel, and it has a picture of Trump. It says, "Make America Great Again." And it's a quote from Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 30. In quotes from the Bible, "I sought for a man among them who would build a wall and stand in the gap before me on behalf of the land, that it should not be destroyed." Wow. Powerful words.
Hey, while we're back on the subject of Trump, I want to cover this. I have said since we first started using computers, and a fellow I know wrote an article. He won a Pulitzer Prize on the subject. But before he even wrote his article, I was there, and I said, "This is not a legitimate voting system. This is fraud." Now, Trump put on a respectable but less spectacular performance in the state of Louisiana and Kentucky, and he failed in Kansas. His victories were narrower than polling had indicated. Why? Well, when they steal an election, or at least play with the election, they can get by with a certain percentage, but they can't go too far because then it's obvious, and that blows it, okay? So, yes, they couldn't, in Louisiana and Kentucky, not give him the election, but they reduced his percentage, okay? And maybe he was close. Cruz was close enough in Kansas; they could steal it there. Right. If you can get into that source code of the computer, then you can control the outcome. And there were ways in the old voting machines. There was a way where you could put a pin in a certain place in the voting machine. Early in the day, you put somebody in there in that particular precinct, and you put a pin in it, and then somebody else came in later in the day, and that eliminated all the votes for that particular candidate. Politics has always been crooked. My late wife, her grandfather, and they were a good family, but he was a Republican precinct committeeman. One of his sons was the elected sheriff in the county, and my father-in-law had ran for state representative. And every election, the barn was full of cases of half pints of whiskey. Why? Well, there was a certain class of people that they would give either $2 or a half pint of whiskey to for their vote. And both sides did it.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that was common. But now you see it's high tech. And, they can do it really big time. And this is something that the American public needs to be aware of, and you just can't tolerate this stuff. because you think you're voting for somebody, and it's all scam. And look, here's what they're going to do to Trump. They are there's a war against him, and they're multiple people in the last 3 or 4 days are comparing him to Hitler. What a load of you know what?
What ridiculousness!
But, yes, but you see, they're hammering him.
Actually,
I don't think it's going to work because I think enough people have woken up to say, "Hold it." Everything that I want for me and my children and grandchildren is going down the tubes, and I'm sick of the Democrats. I'm sick of the Republicans. I'm sick of all this political BS.
Well,
I'm sick of the news media, and they're not buying it anymore. That dog won't hunt.
Right.
But they'll still steal the vote if they can, and if they can't do that, and if they can't stop him, I'm afraid they're going to kill him. And people need to be aware. It's not going to be some clown from ISIS that did shooting.
He wears a level 3 body armor, and he carries a concealed carry weapon, and he has his own private
they'll
security.
do a headshot. You can get through level 3 body armor.
Here's my recommendations for him.
AK-74 round, which is a 5.45 round, will penetrate it.
Right. What he needs to have is what's called a Kevlar bioshield that's always around him whenever he's speaking publicly.
How about a bubble, magic bubble? I mean, the trouble is when you're running for that office, you travel all over. Heck, they can shoot his plane down and say, "Oh, it was an accident."
He actually is in a kind of plane
that's nonsense.
He's in a kind of plane that actually he should have one that has we call backup safety procedures, so that because apparently in one of the places recently he went, they had to do an emergency landing just I think about a week and a half ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. So, he needs to be extra careful because, to be honest with you, what he's doing is probably a lot more dangerous than he realizes.
Actually, I imagine the man is very intelligent. I imagine he realizes, look, he's 70 years old. He's thought about running for president for a couple decades. I think he thinks this is his contribution to his country. And he knows the danger he's in. But damn it, he's willing to try.
That's what you hear with David John Oates on reverse speech. This man is telling the truth. He has a heart. He's trying to work out the policies. He's the first time at it. If he flubs a little bit, guess what? He's a human. He's going to work it out so it's reasonable.
Well, at least he's not paid for like everybody else.
Are you tired of the cold this winter? Are you prepared for the next blizzard?
I'm more measured in my, I'm toning it down because I've had a few rants lately, but you know what? I have to stay calm. And the reason why? I think Trump is going to overcome this. I think that here's what's happening. Both the Republican and the Democratic Party are creating harikari, which is the Japanese thing where they stick the sword in, cut their bowels, and lean over and say hello and faceplant, okay? Both parties are doing
supply
this.
The sword or sharpen it for them if they want.
But here's the point. The point is that people aren't going to take it. They're not going to take this year is the death of Big Pharma that's basically said, "Uncle, we don't have drugs for major pathogens." This is the emergence of genetic plagues like Zika virus, which they tried to hide that the Gates Foundation isn't trying to reduce the population. This is the time when the globalist financial system, derivatives market, and so on, and even Trump is now saying, well, we need to audit the Fed. Well, that's the first step toward what the Libertarian Party wants, which is to get rid of the Fed Reserve and write off this debt. We have a system where basically they've strip-searched America and exported like 50,000 plus companies in the last 20 years. And we wonder why we have high taxes here. In fact, I'll give you an example, and I compare it to Canada. Do you know what the tax rate is in Canada for the average person in the middle class and business, small business? 15%, not 40%. 15. Again, I hear crazy
15,
comments, for example,
really?
from Ted Cruz.
That low?
15. Yeah, that's what it is, okay? If you want to put a car company, you want to move to Mexico or you want to move to Southern Ontario. If you want to know where Detroit is, you have to go to Southern Ontario, and you drive along the 401 and you say, wow. I mean, we wonder where American business is. Just look at Canada. And people say,
a good friend of mine says that one of the key things is we have a 35% corporate tax rate, and that's a killer for American industrial might.
Well, look at the cost of occupational health. The average vehicle in America, just talking about OCMED, occupational health, is $7,000 to $10,000 more to build a car in Detroit or Ohio than it is to build it in Ontario, Canada. Now, it's even cheaper in Mexico, because you've got, a workforce that'll work for a lot less. The cost of living is a lot less. So guess what? Our main sucking sound is not going to China or Malaysia. It's going to Mexico. Everybody and their dog are moving down there.
A good friend of mine, in fact, he's been on your show, Jeff DeVlay. He and his wife live in Corpus Christi, and most of the time for either medical or dental, they go across the border. He has a doctor over there who did his undergraduate work in the United States and got his degree in Mexico. He's an excellent doctor from everything Jeff told me, but it's a tiny fraction. His wife had to have a CAT scan, and they charged her about $20. I had the same thing, same equipment, same film. Charged me $2,000.
Wow.
Yeah, slight difference, just a couple zeros.
Well,
but
I give you an example. I do consultation, and I happen to be a traffic cop. We call a wellness consultant. So I'm going to have a lady that got cancer that she contacted me yesterday. So I'll put her on all our anti-cancer nutraceuticals. And by the way, if you don't take my anti-cancer nutraceuticals, you're wasting your time if you're going to fight cancer. You need to be on malignant arrest, malignant block, et cetera, et cetera. But she wants to go to a clinic to have alternative care. There's two clinics in America, and they've gone through unbelievable persecution. One tries to stay below the radar in California. The other one, Dr. Brzezinski in Houston, is above the radar. But he's been fighting legal challenges, which I've personally supported for the last 20 years through the American Association of Physicians and Surgeons that both Rand and Ron Paul, Dr. Rand and Dr. Ron Paul, have belonged to. And I can tell you, the state medical boards need to be, here's what you need to do in healthcare. You need to get rid of the state medical boards. You need to get rid of malpractice. You need to make healthcare a right. You need to put the doctors, nurses, chiropractors, everybody on salary. You need to get rid of the big pharma drug companies kind of controlling everything. You need to put nutraceuticals and make sure the quality assurance is there, that there's no crap in the stuff, but you also have good quality nutraceuticals. You need to have properly trained people that are advising to use these things, and you have proper testing to identify what's wrong, whether it's functional medicine testing or quantitative resonant or bioplasm from the Russian
in Germany, there are two levels of MDs, I'm told. There's the regular MD, and then there's, I forget what the designation is, but there's an MD who also has specific training in kind of what we would call outside-of-the-box treatment.
Right, which is why I've referred for the last 30 years people to go to Germany for cancer treatments. Some of those are available in Mexico and Central America and other areas of Europe now. And what I would do is I'd send them over there, they get a blood draw. They go to central Germany to go to get a blood draw. They would determine the genetics of the cancer. They would get off-label use of drugs to actually switch those genes back to normal. They would give them, and these are basically non-chemo and other low-dose chemo drugs. They wouldn't lose their hair, have their bone marrow crash, and they'd fight the cancer. Now, none of these things were 100%, but let me tell you, many of the people did go into remission. Many of the people were, quote, I don't want to use the word cured, but their disease went away.
Well, it's far more. My wife died of ovarian cancer almost 17 years ago.
Right.
And at that time, and we had really good insurance, the insurance company spent over $300,000 on her treatment.
The old
and it was all scam. Everything that was done to her just made her sicker than a dog and didn't cure, wasn't going to cure. And I was too stupid the internet was fairly new. You couldn't do the research that you could today.
It wasn't just, Tim, it wasn't just stupid. You didn't have the easy access to the information, but the problem is you were too believing in the system.
I tell you what happens. When you get something like that, you're like a deer in the headlights. You just freak out so much. And that's I try to tell people, and I've tried so many times with people with cancer, you've got to get outside the box. Well, I'm going to a really good doctor. Get outside of that box. Big Pharma is going to kill you. They're going to take all your money, all your insurance money, your house, anything they can grab, and you're going to die a miserable death. Get outside of that box if you want to live.
Right. Okay, give an example.
You know what? Most people don't listen to me.
Some do, and again, we try to do the best we can. What I tell people is I will educate you. I spend some time. And by the way, for my consultations, it's real simple. I've gotten rid of the email consult, just a consult. It's per half hour. You then, once you get the consult, there's an 11-page intake form. I will spend time on the phone with you to talk about this. It's per half-hour time that you purchase for me to spend the time to go over and tell you what to do. We'll monitor your test results. We'll monitor when you go to different alternative clinics. We'll monitor your response to treatment. We'll give you the right kinds of of what we call recommendations of specific places you can go to in Europe or Mexico or elsewhere. You need to understand, you need to take control of the situation, not hand it over to whether it's Kaiser Healthcare in California or some other insurance plan or conventional doctors, and they'll pat you on the back and try to say that they've got this wonderful alternative clinic when really they just talk about what I call the top edge. They have like at the the cancer treatment centers.
Oh, yeah, there's always a new drug coming out. Guess what? That new drug,
no, it's not just
most
that.
it might give you 2 or 3 months of misery.
Tim,
you're still going to die because they're not out to cure you. They're out to milk you for every penny they can get.
I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about places like Cancer Treatment Centers of America that will say, well, we have this big alternative clinic. We've got a naturopath on staff that's a naturopathic cancer oncologist.
Yeah, all right.
They're playing around the edges of it. I can tell you right now, if I listen to these characters, I can tell you that most of what they're going to do is marginally helpful and mostly useless.
Yeah.
And
well,
I will give
Big Pharma controls the medical system. They control the medical licensing system, the state boards. They control. The average physician is the end arm, the end of the tentacle, the marketing tentacle for Big Pharma.
Right, but they use
because you go to the average physician, you're in and out in 5 to 7 minutes, and you walk out with 1, 2, or 3 scripts.
Tim, what they do is they use 2 tools: greed and fear.
Greed
and fear. And again, the same with conventional treatments. I hear tons of people say, my doctor's having me on 4 drugs for hypertension. You might need those temporarily until we start to fix the physiology of your blood vessels and your nitric oxide and so on. You don't need to stay on those forever. The same way if somebody say, my doctor's got all these drugs for hypertension or for congestive heart failure or for, I'm losing my vision and they want to lower my intraocular pressure. That's only one arm of the problem. And you don't want to keep on lowering it until your eyeball is basically soft and mushy. You want to actually improve the circulation to the microcirculation to the retina and the optic nerve head. That's the problem. Okay?
Yep.
But remember now, conventional doctors say, this is what we sell. If you don't like it, and we'll try to bully you into say, this is what we only give you regular conventional paint by numbers chemo, or we're going to give you blasted with radiation with cobalt or proton therapy, whatever. They're full of it. You need to understand, they don't even stage the cancer correctly. The gold standard at Sloan Kettering and other places is spiral CT or MRI to PET within 48 hours. How many cancer patients do you think they do that to? This is the advanced conventional treatment. 1 in 100. I'm talking about the conventional stuff. So they're lazy, sloppy, and they get away with it because you're uninformed or you're in fear.
Folks, get right with God.
Yeah. Absolutely. Back again Thursday with Tim tomorrow. Bill Salas, hour number 3. You don't want to miss it.